She may be a lady, Katie, Pastor Christy, cool as the AC. The high school says, don't get it, she driving like a lady in the small TJ Chris. WNBA smoking, loving the best because they all sing. Tonight we going home. We like it.
All right. With that, folks, good evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans. Coming back at you folks a little bit early tonight here on this Sunday, July the 5th, 2015. Welcome in, folks, to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7 365 comprehensive home for the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks. Coming your way here, folks, from Studio 171 in San Diego and partially from the Heart Studios up in Anaheim, California, to recap 2 games in 1 show, folks. This is the Sparks 365 post-game show following tonight's Phoenix Mercury LA Sparks game that saw the Mercury outlast the Sparks in overtime, 94-91. Good evening, folks. Again, partially joined here from the Heart Studios up in Anaheim, California via Apple's FaceTime is Chris Amansi up there in Anaheim, and of course yours truly, Cal McClure, joining you here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, good evening. How's it going, man?
Good, just wasn't at the game tonight, was supposed to, but just wish I would have went, because what I saw, thanks to Crystal Thomas, who she ran into today at the game.
Now, again, folks, you hear me say that there's 2 games to recap. If you folks were unaware, though, but in the shuffle today of women's professional sporting events was the final game for the 2015 FIFA Women's World Cup taking place today from the BC Place up in Vancouver, British Columbia, and the U.S. women's national team gets behind a 4-1 halftime lead to cruise to their 3rd FIFA Women's World Cup championship, manhandling Japan 5-2. We're going to dive into this game real quick before we do go into the Mercury and Suns game, the final stats for Team USA in the ball game for tonight, folks. Carly Lloyd, who has now become an American icon and hero with a hat trick in the first 16 minutes of the game, scoring goals in the 3rd, 5th, and 16th minute, sandwiched around Lauren Holiday's 14th minute goal and Tobin Heath in the 54th minute. Only 2 goals for Japan, one of them via a own goal by Team USA's Julie Johnson in the 52nd minute. The final game line totals for Team USA: 15 shots, 7 on target, 14 tackles, 14 fouls, and 48% of the possession for Japan. 12 shots, 4 on goal, 11 tackles, 10 fouls, and 52% of the possession. The scoring summary in the game: Carly Lloyd, boom, boom, 2 goals in a 8-minute span in the 3rd and 5th minute. Lauren Holiday in the 14th minute, and then Carly Lloyd finishes the hat trick off in style with a 50-yard chip to beat the goalkeeper in the 16th minute, followed up by Japan scoring their 2 goals in the 27th and 52nd minute. Of course, the second goal for Japan by way of a own goal by Julie Johnston, inadvertently heading a ball past Hope Solo, and then Tobin Heath in the 54th minute to end Team USA's quest for their 3rd World Cup championship. The overall USA stats: Hope Solo today, 3 saves against 5 shots faced in goal today. Again, Lauren Holiday, 1 goal, Tobin Heath the goal, and of course Carly Lloyd, 3 goals on 3 shots, or 3 goals on 5 shots, and all 3 of her shots on frame in the ball game today. And of course, a very big, bittersweet moment for both Christy Rampone and Ambi Wambach, who are playing in their final World Cup games, and of course Team USA winning again today, 5-2. And again, Chris, I know that you only caught one game in the entire tournament, where I was able to catch all the games in the tournament for Team USA. But of course, Chris, the World Cup, of course, any level, man, of course, it's going to be magnified in the press and the media, and of course it will be on here, of course, with the women, of course, Chris. But of course, man, to see, you know, everyone in some capacity, whether you watched one game or I watched all the games on television, Chris, but just to see, though, the entire American sports fan base get behind this team, you know, whether it's Team USA soccer, Team USA basketball, whatever it may be, Chris, you know, in your mind, man, you know, especially, man, that we know that, you know, female sports struggle so bad in this country, where more so they're more seen I guess, kind of seen and perceived better overseas, Chris. To see Team USA capture the World Cup today in women's soccer, Chris, in your mind, what does that do for the sport of soccer at both the men and women's level, Chris, but more so for the female players, though, going forward, seeing Team USA win their third World Cup in the brief history of a tournament? What does that say for the sport in your mind going forward?
Just very great seeing Team USA capturing the World Cup since the first time, since back in 1999. Just very great for Team USA to capture the goal.
Now, Chris, Eric Niemczyk, who's been a great friend of mine on Twitter, who's a huge Chicago Sky fan, Chris, clearly said, though, today, and I think he's right, man, that Eric wishes, and I am co-signing with him, Chris, he agrees and says that now, Chris, why can't Team USA women's basketball get this same type of publicity in the papers, on television, in the media, Chris? Because we know that, of course, the women's soccer team, Chris, has been, a great staple for female athletes, Chris, at any level, any sport it may be, Chris. But in your mind, Chris, now that Team USA has won the World Cup, looking at 2016, Chris, to next year in Rio de Janeiro, Chris, do you hope or do you expect the U.S. women's national basketball team with Diana, with Candace, and anyone else, Chris, do you expect them to get the same amount of publicity, Chris, or in your mind, will it be kind of how it is in the WNBA, Chris, where it won't be the same amount of respect and love that it should be getting on the global stage? What do you think?
I think maybe it'll probably get bigger, just like the women's soccer.
Chris, I'm a bit skeptical about this because we know that the women's soccer team, has, gained national publicity, from the heartbreaking defeat in 2011 and, of course, winning the gold medal in 2012 over in London. But, Chris, I still think, though, that something, I think, Chris, is still not clicking yet with women's basketball on the FIBA and or the Olympic or global stage. I think that it still is sadly treated like the WNBA, Chris. I always say that, Chris. Frankly, though, man, it's on both ends, though, on both the men's side and the women's side, where you can basically, Chris, guarantee that Team USA will be winning the gold medal in basketball on the men's level and on the women's level because of how big of a difference it is between the USA players, the pros, amongst the amateurs that they play and some pro players that do play. But, Chris, I just don't know if it's really going to click just yet for USA basketball on the women's side as it has with the women's soccer team on the national media standpoint. Now, we can get your take here, folks. Again, we're talking a bit about the USA World Cup so far. Again, Team USA with the World Cup final today, beating Japan 5-2 to capture their third Women's World Cup at this point in time, again, in Carly Lloyd, Chris. And, Chris, the thing, though, that always intrigues me about soccer, not because I've worked for a team, Chris, and I won a championship in 2012, 2013 as an employee, Chris, but how one player, Chris, can sort of become the face of that sport or that team for the next 4 years. Chris, we had Alex Morgan in 2011 with her incredible goal to give the USA team the lead in 2011 in the last World Cup. Where now, Chris, Carly Lloyd is going to be having her jersey worn across America for the next 4 years, Chris. And I think, though, man, that, okay, we have Carly Lloyd, Chris, but now, man, it's a matter of, who will it be for the U.S. women's basketball team? I know that I'm going to be ripping a USA 15 jersey for Candace Parker when I do, in fact, get my funds to be able to buy one. I know that you'll rep number 13 for Nneka Ogwumike, Chris, but it's almost like, Chris, I know that it seems like, that the soccer players, Chris, for the women's side are more in the press, Chris, as we know about all this. But, Chris, I guess, man, in your mind, what can we do, I guess, to get the USA women's basketball team the same amount of love and treatment from the media as we do with the U.S. women's soccer team? Because we know that they're probably going to win the 2016 Olympic Games. Chris, in your mind, though, what can be done, though, to continue to improve and grow women's international sports in any sport, any level, going forward into the future?
What?
In your mind, what can be done to continue to grow and keep bringing the positive news? Because, Chris, you and I know this well, that every time we're amongst public people or people that don't support the WNBA, Chris, we're ridiculed. We're thrown to the curb. We're beat down like the dead horses all the time and stuff like that, Chris. So what can be done to ensure that the U.S. women's basketball team for the Olympics and FIBA, Chris, gets the same amount of love and treatment in the media amongst ESPN and Fox Sports 1 in the future going forward, in your mind?
I think probably just pump up the product more and just talk about the product a lot more.
Now, Chris, there's two working media members I want to give humongous and huge shout-outs to real quick. They are two very good connections of mine, Chris. That is Sarah Spain and Kate Fagan from ESPNW.com. You guys may know Kate Fagan is a recurring analyst and panelist on ESPN's Around the Horn. And Chris, Sarah and Kate, Chris, throughout the entire World Cup, pretty much, man, ranted and raved about what they feel like needs to happen to continue to improve the sports, to continue to grow female sports in general, Chris. And Chris, Sarah Spain, I love seeing her tweets during the World Cup, Chris, of how she continued to put Twitter trolls in their place. And Chris, I'm a media guy, Chris, that respects opinions of people, but I cannot stand trolls at all, Chris. So I guess, man, Sarah Spain and Kate Fagan, Chris, have been great, Chris. So in your mind, man, does it help though, Chris, that when ESPN and Fox Sports 1 bring in these female analysts, like Sarah, like Kate, or one of my favorite women's soccer players of all time, Chris, bringing in Julie Foudy, Chris, does that also kind of help the product in your mind that they bring in female analysts or former female athletes to cover these sort of events in your mind too?
Yeah, I think it'd be good if they bring former athletes to be on the list.
And also, folks, a quick shout out to Fox Sports 1 and Fox for their tremendous coverage of the World Cup on social media. Of course, on television, showing all the games on television this year. So tremendous, just all-around great work by Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports this year. And, of course, to Kate Fagan and Sarah Spain for engaging with their viewers and listeners from ESPN on Twitter, and, of course, doing their best to really try to say why they're in the business for a reason. But, again, folks, to reiterate once more, but again, FIFA Women's World Cup Final, Team USA 5, Japan 2. Team USA is the first team to win 3 FIFA Women's World Cup. Carly Lloyd, Captain America, Captain Marvel, Miss USA, whatever you want to call her, folks. Hat trick in the first half, 3 goals in a 16-minute span to help Team USA cruise to their 3rd FIFA Women's World Cup. Good luck, ladies, in your NWSL seasons, and we'll see you guys again in a couple years for the Olympic Games, and, of course, again in 2019 for the next FIFA Women's World Cup. So, again, folks, Team USA beats Japan for the FIFA Women's World Cup title 5-2, a final from the BC place in Vancouver, BC. All right, Chris. Now to the more important game on hand tonight, Chris, from the Staples Center in downtown L.A., the L.A. Sparks and Phoenix Mercury hooked up for the 19th straight year, the longest-running WNBA rivalry in league history, and the Mercury outlast L.A. 94-91 in a overtime thriller up there at Staples Center. Leilani Mitchell, a player of the game with the game-winning three-pointer at the final buzzer in overtime for Phoenix in the ballgame. Final line score for Phoenix in the ballgame, 26 in the first, 16 in the second, 23 in the third, and 20 in the fourth. 9 in the OT session for the game total of 94. For Los Angeles, 27 in the first, 19 in the second, 17 in the third, 22 in the fourth, but 6 in the overtime session for the game total of 91. The Mercury with the win improved back over 500 to 6-5 on the season, 2-4 away from home. LA with the loss goes to 2-8 and 2-4 at Staples Center this year. For the Mercury, box score of the night, Monique Curry 12 points, Candice Dupree 21, Brittany Griner 19, Leilani Mitchell 7 points, but had her bigger 3 points in the ballgame at the final buzzer for Phoenix in overtime. Dewana Bonner 22 off the bench, Misty Bass 2, Kayla Francis and Alex Harding no points, Marta Exagri, Casa Dumont 3 points, and Noel Quinn 8. Jakima Christian and Tiffany Bias all held out coaches' decisions for Sandy Brondello's Mercury. For the LA Sparks, suffering a pretty heartbreaking loss today at Staples Center at home this afternoon. Nneka Ogwumike 26, Jantel Lavender, Mariana Tullo 10 each. Aaron Phillips 20 points, KT 16. And off the bench, really no help for LA, only having 3 healthy players tonight on the bench. Andrea Hoover and Jen Hampson all no points, and Tamika Johnson 9 points, including 2 back-to-back buzzer beaters, 2 in the first and second half in the ball game. Not playing for the Sparks tonight, Faria Abdi, injured left knee. Jen Lacey and Jasmine Lister, coach's decision. Elena Beard, DNP, left foot issue bothering her. The final attendance tonight, 7,126 from the Staples Center in downtown L.A. Time of the game, 2 hours and 6 minutes. Referees tonight, Michael Price, Maj Forsberg, and Tyler Ford. Now, Chris, you had caught more of this game than I did because I only caught the final score because I was watching the World Cup game. But, Chris, okay, man. Still improving. Everything's still going in a very good direction, Chris. Okay, Chris, I look at it this way. You took the defending champs to overtime, but just ran out of gas in the overtime session, Chris. And, of course, only suiting up 3 bench players was not a good sign for the Sparks, Chris. Tell you what, though, man, an absolute thriller tonight, though, regardless of if you were rooting for the Sparks or Mercury tonight, folks. Chris, and all, another classic LA Phoenix game, Chris. A very physical battle going down to those final possessions, Chris. But in your mind, though, man, you saw more of the game than I did. What, though, went wrong in your mind for the Sparks as you look back at the final line score and again seeing that the Sparks lose by 3? And above all, Chris, a 3-pointer at the final buzzer in heartbreaking fashion, a la Griner in 2013 in the postseason in Game 3. What went wrong in your mind, though, going forward as you look back at this game?
The Sparks were clicking on all cylinders, but had some missed calls that didn't go the Sparks' way. I think it was the third quarter, I want to say. Brian Agler was hot. The whole Sparks bench was firing and all hot because Phoenix should have been a jump ball, but didn't get the call, and Phoenix got a basket out of that. And then the fourth quarter, toward the end of the game, Tamika Johnson, a crucial turnover that led to sending to overtime and some crucial calls that the Sparks blew late to the end of the game.
Chris, okay, maybe we can, use the referee card again and punch that into the time clock, but Chris, you can't really use that excuse much times, especially in a game like this when it's 2 big rivals, Chris, going head-to-head. And obviously, yes, I saw that play, Chris. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. But, Chris, LA, though, got bailed out, though, in the fourth quarter when the ball clearly went off of Jantel Lavender out of bounds with about 20 seconds to play in the ball game. But the officials ruled it otherwise, saying it was still LA ball. But, Chris, Tamika Johnson, that costly turnover, and, of course, the Mercury, Chris, which would have been basically, a repeat of Brittany Griner beating the Sparks in the postseason in 2013 in Game 3 at Staples, Chris, but the shot goes wide. But, of course, Chris, okay, maybe you could say it was the officiating, but, Chris, I think in that situation, man, they played solid defense all night. Brittany Griner, Chris, spite of her half-hearted dunk attempt in the first quarter, Chris, could not go anywhere between Nneka Ogwumike and Mariana Tullo, Chris, block after block on her, shutting her down early in the ballgame, Chris, keeping her quiet off the scoreboard. But, of course, it does not go LA's way. But, of course, Chris, I think, though, that the turning point, though, was that one last possession, though, where the Sparks could have went ahead, won the ballgame, and, Tamika Johnson, Chris, probably was looking one way. Maybe the player she was going to, Chris, went the wrong direction on the cut, perhaps, towards the hoop, and the ball goes out of bounds. And, of course, the Mercury get the chance to tie, but, of course, the shot goes wide. But still, Chris, a very, very rugged overtime session. So, I mean, Chris, frankly, as I tweeted, Chris, on the network, it was a seesaw second half. But, again, Chris, as you know well, man, Chris, that when the Sparks have a lead, I do not feel safe with whatever lead they have, Chris. So, obviously, again, man, obviously the depth is one part again, but, of course, I think, Chris, it's a positive and a negative, Chris. It's a negative that you lost, but still, Chris, a positive, Chris, because you took the chance to OT with a chance to win. Chris, you were in the ball game. Chris, both teams were in the game all night. This wasn't a case of someone having a 19-point lead and blowing it incrementally, Chris, where it was neck and neck, seesaw battle all the way through, Chris. So, of course, great game. So, Chris, in your mind, though, your final thoughts on the night's game, as Chris, the Mercury win 94-91. Your final thoughts on this game are what?
A very great game between both teams, even though the Sparks came up just short in overtime. The Sparks put up a great fight against the defending champions, the Phoenix Mercury. Like someone said on Twitter, once Candace Parker returns, the Sparks should beat Phoenix Mercury.
Chris, only time will tell with that one, of course, folks. As you guys, again, as we're all aware of, again, we won't go there, but again, folks, Candace Parker is expected back after the All-Star break concludes, and the Sparks' first game after the break will be on July 29th versus the Minnesota Lynx in Minneapolis. Chris, there was one more game on the afternoon slate today in the WNBA where the Atlanta Dream outlasted the Seattle Storm in Atlanta 72-64, a final score, but Storm with the loss faltered to 3-9 on the season, 1-6 away from Key Arena in Seattle. The Dream with the win and go to 5-6 and 4-3 at home this year. The foul line score for the Seattle Storm: 14 in the first, 13 in the second, 12 in the third, and a triumphant comeback. 25 points, though, in the fourth, fell short, though, 64 points. Atlanta, 16 in the first, 20 in the second, 13 in the 17 in the third, and 19 in the fourth of the game, total of 72 for Atlanta. Final box score, excuse me, for Seattle in the ball game: Crystal Langhorn, 5 points, Alicia Clark, 11, Abby Bishop, 7, Sue Bird, 11, Jenna O'Hay, 3. Off the bench, Markeisha Gatling, no points, Quadriana Hongsworth, 2, Ramu Takahashi, 11, Jewel Lloyd, 12, and Renee Montgomery, 2 points. KML and Angel Goodrich all held out. Coach's decision for Seattle. For the Atlanta Dream tonight with the victory: Sancho Little, 8 points, Erica De Souza, 9, Mati Ajavan, 8, Angel McContry, 23 points off for her this evening. Tiffany Hayes, 12 points. Shoni Schimmel and Sierra Burdick, no points in the ballgame. Anika Henry, 2 points. Monica Hodges, 2. Erica Wheeler, 8 points. DMJ and Cindy Carter all held on the ballgame. No points for them in the game as they are held out again. The Storm with the loss go to 3-9 the season, 1-6 away from home. In Atlanta now 5-6, 4-3 at home so far this season down there in Atlanta. Now, Chris, the Sparks get a couple of days off to recuperate, folks. Here's your upcoming forecast of games for the WNBA. Off day tomorrow. Games on Tuesday. One game on Tuesday. Tulsa at Atlanta. 5 o'clock tip. The game can be seen on ESPN2 and the Watch ESPN app. And Chris, the Sparks not back in action until Wednesday, Friday, until Wednesday and Saturday this upcoming week, folks. The Sparks begin a brief road trip through San Antonio, Tulsa, and Seattle before coming home to play the Atlanta Dream on Thursday, July 16th at Staples Center at 12:30 p.m. So, Chris, we look at this, man, okay, the Stars, as we know, man, the Sparks beat the Stars this past Thursday to get their first win of the season, Chris. The Sparks outraced Tulsa, the defense line, on Friday. So, Chris, you mind, though, what would you say, though, Chris, about the Sparks playing the same two teams they've already beaten once already, Chris? Where's the confidence in your mind knowing that, hey, we played this team already, we're playing them again for those, basically 2 times in a week, Chris? In your mind, where is LA's confidence saying that, hey, we played this team already, we beat them already? What does that say about the Sparks going forward, knowing that, hey, we played these guys already, we beat them? So I guess, Chris, what would you say is the confidence right now for the Sparks looking ahead to this, 3-game road trip coming up on the horizon?
They're saying we can beat them again. We're coming off another victory against the Stars, and pretty much we got some confidence that we can beat them again in their own building.
So, folks, the Sparks' upcoming schedule here for our next show for Sparks Fam coming up here at 10 o'clock tonight. Sparks and Stars in San Antonio Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Sparks and Shock on Saturday at 5 o'clock. And then Sparks and Storm on Wednesday the 15th, or 16th, I should say. One of those 2 dates. I'm all confused here. Coming up on the 15th, I was right. So, again, Sparks and Storm on the 15th at 12 o'clock. So, folks, again, to reiterate the schedule once more, but again, L.A. at San Antonio on Wednesday, 5 o'clock tip-off. L.A. at Tulsa Saturday at 5 o'clock. And then next Wednesday, the 15th, Sparks at Seattle. Game time at 12 o'clock. And then at 12:30, the next Thursday, the 16th, Sparks in Atlanta. Next home game following that road trip. So, again, Sparks in San Antonio, Sparks in Tulsa, Sparks in Seattle. The next 3 games, and all 3 of those games can be seen on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet and Time Warner Cable Deport this. With that, Chris, before we get out of here for our next show, your final thoughts on tonight's game are what?
Just a very great game between both teams, between the Phoenix Mercury and the Los Angeles Sparks. Going back and forth, head-to-head, down to the final buzzer. Speaking about buzzers, Megan Johnson with buzzer beaters tonight's game, and just very great game between both teams, even though the Sparks fell short.
Oh, Chris, the gas gauge again goes from full to empty in the overtime session. Again, folks, the final score again tonight, L.A. falters to Phoenix 94-91. In case anyone out there is wondering, that is the L.A. Sparks' that is L.A.'s 9th consecutive loss to the Mercury, including the 3 playoff losses. The first one, of course, in 2013 in Game 3, and also as well the final loss as well. The 6 losses last year, and also the loss, of course, in the playoffs last year as well. So 9 straight losses for L.A. versus the Phoenix Mercury. With that, folks, we'll take a quick timeout. We need to come back. Tweets, Instagram photos, emails, live Q&A, and our question tonight, folks, as well. What is your go-to and/or favorite video game of all time? Give us your responses on Sparks Fam up next right here on LAS 365. So please do not go away.